It was an unusually cold evening for early spring. The last remnants of daylight lingered, casting a muted orange glow across the city as FBI Special Agent Marcus Mitchell sat hunched over his desk. Piles of paperwork were scattered across the table, each case demanding his attention, but none as urgent as the one that had just arrived. He pushed a stack of files aside, ran a hand through his hair, and sighed. The constant hum of the fluorescent lights above was almost as monotonous as the work itself. His partner, Agent Lila Reynolds, stood near the coffee machine, filling her mug with the last remnants of lukewarm coffee. Her eyes scanned the room briefly before landing on Marcus. They'd been partners for over 3 years, but tonight felt different. The weight of a case hanging in the air, too heavy for words. The phone rang, breaking the silence. Marcus didn't need to check the caller ID. It was probably another routine tip or an anonymous informant with half a lead. Yet something in the back of his mind told him this call would be different. He picked up the receiver. Mitchell. A faint, trembling voice responded almost immediately. "Agent Mitchell, you have to help us. Please, you have to come." Marcus blinked, shifting in his chair. The woman's voice was shaky, almost frantic. "Who is this?" I'm from the Riverton Animal Shelter. "You don't know me, but please, we need help," she pleaded. "There's a dog here, and something's wrong." So wrong. Lila glanced over at Marcus, sensing the shift in his demeanor. She stepped closer, leaning against the edge of his desk. "Slow down," Marcus said, trying to calm the woman. "What's going on? What's wrong with the dog?" "It's not just the dog. It's everything," the woman gasped. "The dog. It's been here for hours. It came in bloody and frantic, but there's more. It's been trying to tell us something. It won't stop begging for help. It's led us here." Marcus leaned forward, his hand gripping the phone tightly. "Led you where?" "Into the woods," she whispered. "And it keeps barking at the door, like it wants someone to follow. It's urgent, Agent Mitchell. It's like it knows. Please, we don't know what to do." Marcus exchanged a look with Lila. She raised an eyebrow, and Marcus, despite the unease creeping up his spine, nodded. They had handled many bizarre cases, missing persons, kidnappings, cold cases, but this felt different. It wasn't just a distressed animal. It was a message. And he had learned long enough in his career that strange things sometimes led to even stranger truths. "We'll be there shortly," Marcus said, his voice steady, though he couldn't quite shake the feeling that this was more than just a routine visit. The drive to the animal shelter felt longer than it was. Marcus couldn't help but feel a strange sense of foreboding in the pit of his stomach. The road leading out of the city twisted through miles of empty fields and run-down farmland. It was a stretch of land most people avoided, and with good reason. There were rumors of things lurking in the woods, of disappearances long since forgotten by the authorities. But nothing concrete. Just whispers. As they pulled up to the shelter, the air felt colder, almost unnaturally so. The small building stood isolated at the end of the long gravel driveway, barely visible from the road due to the dense trees that surrounded it. The only sign of life was a faint glow coming from the window, and the sound of dogs barking in the distance. They parked their car and stepped out into the night. The chill in the air felt sharp against their skin as they made their way to the entrance. Marcus could hear Lila's boots crunching against the gravel, her pace quick but purposeful. Inside, the shelter was cramped and dimly lit. A few stray dogs lay on their bedding, some whining softly in their sleep. But it wasn't the animals that caught Marcus's attention. It was the woman who greeted them, her face pale and drawn, her hands trembling as she wrung them together. Sarah," she said, her voice still tight with anxiety. "Thank you for coming." Marcus nodded, his hand resting on his holstered weapon instinctively. He didn't know why. He wasn't expecting trouble, but the air here felt wrong. Off. "Where's the dog?" Lila asked, her voice softer, now concerned. "Right this way," Sarah said, leading them down a narrow hall toward a small back room. "It's in here." As they entered, Marcus's eyes immediately landed on the dog. A large German shepherd lay on the floor in the far corner, its fur matted with blood. Its chest rose and fell rapidly as if it had been running for miles. The dog's eyes, wide and glassy, flickered toward them as they entered. It didn't bark, didn't growl, but the intensity in its gaze was unmistakable. It was as if it knew they were here for something important. The room was quiet except for the soft whimpering of the dog and the faint creaking of the building settling. It didn't bark in greeting, nor did it wag its tail. It simply lay there, watching them, with that same pleading look. Lila knelt down to get a closer look. "What happened to it?" she asked softly. Sarah's voice shook. "It came from the woods. It was almost dead when it got here. We tried to take care of it, but it just keeps looking at the door, keeps pacing, as if it wants us to follow." Marcus stepped closer, his eyes narrowing as he studied the dog. He couldn't explain it, but there was something unsettling about the animal's gaze. It wasn't the typical fear of a wounded animal. There was a desperation in its eyes, a plea that felt almost human. "Follow it where?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know, but it's not just a dog," Sarah replied, her voice trembling. "It knows something." Before they could say anything else, the dog let out a low whine. It struggled to its feet, its body trembling as it took a hesitant step toward the door. It paused, looking back at them. The message was clear. It wanted them to follow. Without thinking, Marcus nodded to Lila. "Let's go." And with that, they followed the dog out into the cold night, unaware that their lives were about to change forever. The moon hung low in the sky as Marcus and Lila followed, the dog through the shelter's back door, which creaked in protest as they stepped into the cold night air. A thick mist had begun to roll in, swirling around their feet like a living thing. The dense forest that bordered the shelter stood before them, dark and ominous. The dog, a large German shepherd, led the way with a sense of urgency. Its body was stiff, and its eyes were wide with fear, almost too aware of something they could not yet see. Lila adjusted her jacket, trying to shake off the unease creeping up her spine. She shot Marcus a quick glance. "This is insane," she muttered under her breath. "Why are we following this dog? It's just an animal." Marcus, his hand instinctively hovering near his holstered weapon, didn't reply immediately. He wasn't sure how to explain the feeling gnawing at the back of his mind. It was as if they were being drawn into something they had no control over, something far darker than any case they'd encountered before. They continued down the gravel path, the dog now trotting ahead, its paws crunching softly under the gravel. The trees seemed to close in around them, their thick branches arching overhead like skeletal arms, blocking out the last traces of moonlight. The air felt colder with each step. "There's something wrong here," Marcus muttered, his voice low. Lila glanced over at him, but before she could respond, the dog stopped abruptly, its head turned slowly, eyes locked on something in the distance. It let out a low growl, a sound so filled with dread that Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. "What is it?" Lila whispered, but the dog was already moving again, heading toward the woods without a second thought. The ground beneath their feet grew soft, the path now nothing more than an uneven dirt trail. Marcus felt his instincts sharpen. "Stay alert," he told Lila, his voice just above a whisper. The dog led them deeper into the forest, its steps sure and steady, as if it knew exactly where it was going. The deeper they ventured, the quieter the world became. There were no sounds of wildlife, no rustling leaves or chirping insects. The silence felt unnatural, almost suffocating. They pushed forward, the air growing colder with every passing minute. The dog's pace quickened, and it let out another growl, this time more frantic. "What's wrong with it?" Lila asked, her eyes scanning the darkness. The tension in her voice was evident, her nerves frayed from the oppressive quiet that surrounded them. Before Marcus could answer, a flash of light caught his attention. It was faint at first, barely visible through the trees, but it was unmistakable. A soft flickering glow like a candle's flame dancing between the branches. "Over there," Marcus said, pointing toward the glow. "We're getting close." The dog's pace didn't slow, but it began to bark loudly, its voice sharp and urgent. The sound echoed through the trees, but oddly, it didn't seem to travel. It was as if the forest was absorbing the noise, swallowing it whole. They followed the dog, their steps quickening as the light grew brighter. The trees finally parted, revealing a clearing at the center of the forest. The source of the light came from an old, decaying house, a structure that looked like it had been abandoned for decades. Its once white paint was now chipped and peeling, its windows shattered and its roof sagged under the weight of time. The dog stopped at the edge of the clearing, its body low to the ground, its eyes locked onto the house. Marcus froze. There was something deeply unsettling about the place, something that didn't feel right. "Why would the dog lead us here?" Lila whispered, almost to herself. "This house looks abandoned." Marcus didn't respond immediately. His senses were on high alert, his eyes darting over the structure, trying to pick up any signs of movement. The house was still, silent, as if waiting. The dog didn't hesitate. It darted forward, its legs moving with practiced speed as it rushed toward the front porch. It stopped in front of the door and turned to look back at them, its eyes wide, with fear and urgency. It barked once more, the sound sharp and pleading. Lila felt a sense of dread wash over her. "What is it trying to tell us?" she asked, her voice low. Marcus, still unsure of the answer, nodded toward the door. "Let's go inside." The house loomed before them like a dark, forgotten monument. The air around it felt charged, heavy with something Marcus couldn't explain. It was as if the very ground they stood on had been marked by something ancient, something that had been lying in wait for a long time. With a deep breath, Marcus stepped forward, followed by Lila. As they approached the front door, the dog stood, still, watching them intently. It seemed almost resigned to what was about to happen. Marcus reached for the door handle. His fingers brushed against the cold metal, and for a brief moment, he hesitated. He could feel the pulse of something beneath the surface, an unspoken warning, but there was no turning back now. He pushed the door open with a slow, deliberate motion. It creaked loudly in protest, the sound of rusted hinges echoing through the silent air. The interior of the house was even more unsettling. The air was stale, thick with dust, and the faint scent of something long decayed clung to every corner. The floorboards groaned under their weight as they entered, their footsteps muffled in the stillness. The dog moved past them, heading further, into the house, its every movement careful, almost deliberate. It stopped in the center of the room, turned toward them, and sat down. Its eyes locked onto Marcus and Lila, as if it was waiting for them to make the next move. "What now?" Lila asked, her voice barely audible. Before Marcus could respond, the house seemed to exhale. The temperature dropped suddenly, a chill sweeping through the room. And then, without warning, the lights flickered. The sudden drop in temperature was almost suffocating. A cold draft swept through the room, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of decay. Marcus's breath formed, a mist in the air, and he instinctively pulled his jacket tighter around his body. He glanced at Lila, who was looking around with a mixture of confusion and apprehension. "What the hell is this place?" Lila whispered, her eyes scanning the dusty corners of the room. She stepped forward, trying to shake off the chill that had settled in her bones. The dog, still sitting motionless in the center of the room, let out a soft whine, its body tense as if it could sense the tension in the air. It continued to stare at them, its gaze unwavering. The same intense, pleading expression that had haunted them since they arrived. Marcus swallowed hard. "Something isn't right here." Lila nodded, her eyes darting to the broken windows, the shattered glass gleaming in the faint moonlight. The wind outside howled, but the house remained eerily quiet. It was as if the world beyond had disappeared entirely, leaving them alone in this abandoned shell. The air grew heavier, the silence thicker. As they took their first cautious steps further into the room, The floorboards creaked ominously underfoot. They both froze, instinctively drawing closer to each other, their hands lingering near their weapons. The house seemed to groan, its walls sighing with age and neglect. "Maybe we should just leave," Lila said, her voice tinged with unease. "This feels wrong." Marcus considered the suggestion, but a nagging sense of urgency pressed on his chest. The dog had led them here, and it was clear it was waiting for something. It was as if the dog knew this was where they were meant to be. "No," Marcus said softly, shaking his head. "We're not walking away from this, not yet." He moved further into the room, his eyes flicking to the walls. Strange symbols were etched into the wood, faded but still discernible. Some were circular, others jagged, as though drawn by a hand that didn't know the meaning of symmetry. They pulsed faintly, like they were alive, and Marcus felt an uncomfortable sensation creep down his spine. There was something deeply unnatural about this place. Lila stepped closer to him, her voice barely a whisper. "What are those?" Marcus's gaze hardened as he studied the symbols. "I don't know, but I have a feeling we're about to find out." Before Lila could respond, a loud crash echoed from the back of the house, followed by a low, guttural growl that made Marcus's blood run cold. The dog, once calm, bolted to its feet, its hackles raised. It barked sharply, its voice filled with panic. Then the floorboards behind them creaked again. Slowly, almost deliberately, something began to shift in the shadows. A figure, tall and indistinct, emerged from the darkness. At first it was barely more than a silhouette, but as it stepped closer to the dim light, it became clear. The thing that emerged from the shadows was not human. Its long, gaunt body seemed to twist unnaturally, its skin stretched thin over protruding bones. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural, fiery orange hue, and its mouth opened to reveal sharp, jagged teeth. The air around it rippled as if reality itself was bending under its presence. Marcus's heart pounded in his chest. He reached for his gun, his fingers trembling. "Lila, get ready," he whispered, his voice tight. But the figure didn't move toward them. Instead, it stopped just a few feet away, its head tilting to the side, observing them with cold, calculating eyes. The dog, once so frantic, now stood frozen, its body low to the ground, a whimper escaping its throat. It looked back at Marcus and Lila, its eyes filled with unmistakable fear. The creature stepped forward, its movements slow, deliberate. The air grew colder still. The walls seemed to pulse, the strange symbols now glowing brighter, their light flickering like the dying embers of a fire. "You shouldn't have come." The voice was a low, rasping growl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It vibrated in Marcus's chest, sending waves of nausea through him. He tightened, his grip on his weapon, but his hand felt numb. "What are you?" Marcus demanded, trying to keep his voice steady. The creature tilted its head again, its smile widening in a grotesque parody of amusement. "I am what you fear most, what you have awakened." It took another slow step toward them. "You should not have come to this place." Lila took a cautious step back, her breath shallow. What do you want from us?" The creature's eyes burned brighter, and the air grew thick with a heavy, suffocating weight. "I want nothing. You, however, have awakened the price of curiosity, the price of meddling with what should remain forgotten." Marcus's heart raced. Every instinct he had told him to run, to get out of this house before it was too late, but his legs felt frozen. He tried to move, but it was as if his body was unwilling to obey. The creature's voice echoed again, a deep, resonating sound that seemed to come from the very walls themselves. "You have been chosen to bear witness." Suddenly the dog barked, louder, more desperately than before, and lunged forward. The creature's eyes flicked to the dog, and for a moment, there was a flicker of something like recognition in its gaze. But before anyone could react, the dog collapsed to the floor with a sharp yelp, its body jerking as if it had been struck by an unseen force. Marcus and Lila rushed forward, but they were too late. The dog lay motionless, its chest barely rising. Marcus felt a cold knot form in his stomach. The creature looked down at the dog, then back at Marcus and Lila. its smile widening in satisfaction. Your witness has failed. The price has been paid. As Marcus crouched next to the dog, his fingers trembling, he realized that they had just uncovered a darkness far deeper than they had imagined. Whatever had been awakened here, whatever this thing was, it was not done with them yet. The air in the room felt heavier now, thick with a sense of dread that clung to Marcus's skin like a second layer. The dog lay motionless in front of him, its once vibrant eyes dull and lifeless, the faint rise and fall of its chest barely noticeable. Marcus's hand trembled as he reached out to touch the animal's fur, hoping for some sign of life, but the coldness of its body sent a chill deep into his bones. Leela stood beside him, her eyes wide, her breath shallow. She was still processing what had just happened. The creature, the thing that had emerged from the shadows, had done something to the dog, something far beyond their understanding. "Is it dead?" Lila asked, her voice breaking the silence. Marcus didn't answer, at first. He felt a deep, unsettling heaviness in his chest, a weight that wasn't just from the situation but from something else, a cold, malevolent force that seemed to hang in the very air around them. The dog's life had been taken so quickly, so violently that it didn't feel natural, and the creature, whatever it was, had watched it happen with no remorse, its eyes gleaming with an unholy satisfaction. "Marcus?" Lila's voice brought him back to the present. Marcus looked up, his eyes meeting hers. There was fear in her eyes, raw and unfiltered, but also something else, something deeper, more primal. The fear of not knowing what came next, the fear of what they had awakened. He stood slowly, his body stiff. "I think we need to leave. Now." Lila nodded, but she didn't move. Instead, she glanced back at the creature, which was still standing in the center of the room. Its eyes burned like hot embers, its smile stretching wider as if enjoying the confusion and terror they were experiencing. "Leaving isn't an option," the creature rasped, its voice echoing throughout the room. "You've already crossed the threshold." Marcus's grip on his weapon tightened. "What do you mean, crossed the threshold?" he demanded, his voice hard. "What is this place? What is that thing?" He gestured to the dog's body, his words filled with desperation. The creature tilted its head almost as if it was amused by Marcus's confusion. It took a slow step forward, its long, unnatural limbs stretching unnervingly. "You are trespassers in a place that has long been forgotten, a place where the price of curiosity is not easily paid." "Price of curiosity?" Lila echoed. "What do you want from us?" The creature's smile grew, stretching further, revealing rows of teeth that seemed to glint in the dim light. "Curiosity brought you here. It is what made you follow the dog. It is what brought you to the house. And now—" The creature paused as if savoring the moment. "Now, you will pay." Marcus's heart pounded in his chest. "We didn't ask for this. We came because the dog needed help. It led us here. You led us here." The creature's eyes glowed brighter, the fiery orange light now seeming to flicker like a flame about to go out. It moved closer, its breath hot against the cold air, and Marcus could feel the weight of its presence in his gut. The dog knew. It was always meant to bring you here. It was the one who called you. It was its fate to die for yours. Lila's face paled. "You're saying the dog died because of us?" The creature's laugh was a dry, rattling sound that made Marcus's skin crawl. "It died so that you could bear witness." "Bear witness to what?" Marcus asked, though he already had a sinking feeling in his gut that he didn't want to know the answer. The creature's expression darkened. "To what happens when you disturb the forgotten, when you awaken the ancient forces that were meant to sleep forever." Before Marcus could speak, a loud, shrill sound cut through the room, a scream. It wasn't human, it was low, guttural, and filled with agony. It reverberated through the walls, the sound so distorted that it seemed to be coming from inside their heads, as though the very air was screaming at them. The creature stood motionless, its eyes fixed on the far corner of the room. And then, as if in response to the scream, the symbols etched into the walls flared to life. They glowed with an unholy light, their edges shifting and warping like the tendrils of a living thing. The room seemed to pulse, as though the house itself was coming alive, feeding off the energy of the forgotten forces it had kept trapped within its walls for centuries. Marcus backed away, his hand still gripping his gun. "What is this?" he breathed, his voice hoarse. "What have we done?" The creature's eyes narrowed, its smile fading into something more sinister. "You have unleashed what was never meant to be known. You have come to the heart of this place. And now you will stay here." Lila stepped back, her hand gripping Marcus's arm. "We can't stay here. We have to leave. Now." But as she spoke, the air grew even colder. The temperature in the room dropped so quickly that Marcus's breath came out in sharp, visible bursts. The house seemed to creak and groan as though the very foundation was shifting, and then from the darkness something moved. It was barely visible at first, just a shadow. But as it crept closer, the shape became clearer. A figure, tall and hunched with glowing eyes that reflected the same malevolent orange as the creature. It emerged from the shadows, its body contorted, its skin pulled tight over its bones. Its arms hung low, dragging behind it like broken limbs. The air in the room thickened, becoming oppressive. Marcus's throat tightened. He felt as if the walls were closing in around him. "You can't escape," the creature hissed, its voice a whisper of wind. "You've already been chosen." The shadowy figure moved closer, and suddenly, the house seemed to pulse with energy, an invisible force swirling around them. The temperature continued to plummet, and Marcus felt an overwhelming sense of dread. The house was alive, and it was waiting for them to fall deeper into its grasp. The house seemed to be closing in on them, the very walls pulsing like a heartbeat, each thud louder than the last. Marcus could feel the energy in the air, thick and oppressive, pressing against him, suffocating him. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but there was nowhere to go. No escape. The shadowy figure, its body twisted and contorted, moved slowly toward them, its glowing eyes burning with a hunger that made Marcus's skin crawl. The other creature, the one that had spoken earlier, lingered in the shadows, watching with a malevolent smile that stretched impossibly wide across its face. Lila clutched Marcus's arm tighter, her grip desperate. "What is this place? What is happening?" "I don't know," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I think it's a prison for whatever this is." The creature's low, rasping laugh echoed through the room. "You're not wrong." Lila's eyes darted around, desperately searching for any sign of escape. "We can't stay here, we have to get out now." But Marcus could feel the weight of the creature's gaze pressing on him, and he knew that running was no longer an option. There was something primal about this place, something that reached deep inside him, gnawing at his thoughts, filling him with dread. The shadowy figure took another step forward, and suddenly, the entire room trembled. The walls groaned, the floorboards creaked, and the symbols etched into the wood flared with a bright, searing light. Marcus staggered back, blinking against the sudden brightness. The creature let out a low hiss, its eyes narrowing as if in approval. "You've come too far to turn back now," the creature rasped. "You've already awakened what was meant to remain forgotten, and now you will pay the price." Lila looked up at Marcus, her eyes filled with fear. "We can't just stand here. What do we do?" Marcus's mind raced. He thought of the dog, its death, its sacrifice, and a cold realization hit him. The dog had been the key. It had led them here for a reason, not to help them, but to make them bear witness to something far darker. "Maybe it's not the creature we need to fight," Marcus said, his voice quiet but resolute. "Maybe it's the house." Lila blinked, confused. "The house?" Marcus nodded. "This place isn't just a house, it's a vessel, a prison. It holds whatever these things are, the creatures that feed on fear, on curiosity. The dog died because it was the price for disturbing them. for coming here." Lila's face paled. "You mean we're trapped? We can't leave?" Marcus's heart sank. "I don't know, but we have to try." The shadowy figure let out another spine-chilling growl, its limbs bending at unnatural angles. It moved, closer, its hands outstretched as if it were about to pounce. Marcus raised his gun, but the creature was already upon him. It moved with unnatural speed, its glowing eyes fixed on him with a malevolent hunger. Before he could react, it was on him, its claws scraping against his chest, sending a wave of cold through his body. But then something unexpected happened. The room around them trembled, and the ground beneath their feet shook violently. The symbols on the walls flared even brighter, their light overwhelming, casting eerie shadows across the room. The air grew thick with a strange energy, and Marcus felt a rush of adrenaline surge through him. The creature's grip loosened for a split second. Lila, her face etched with fear and determination, grabbed Marcus's arm and yanked him back. "We have to fight back, now!" Marcus nodded, struggling to catch his breath. "I don't know how." But then he saw it, the symbols on the walls. They weren't just etched into the wood. They were carved into the very fabric of the house itself. They pulsed with power, with an energy that felt ancient, forgotten, but still alive. The house was not just a prison for the creatures. It was their prison. It was the thing that held them here, trapping them in the depths of the forest, feeding off the curiosity of those who dared to enter. Marcus's hand moved instinctively toward the dog's body, still lifeless on the floor. His fingers brushed against its fur, and for a moment he could have sworn he felt something stir within it, something not entirely dead. The creature lunged again, but this time, Marcus was ready. He dove to the side, narrowly avoiding its claws. He looked at the symbols again, his mind racing. There had to be a way to stop it. Then he realized he wasn't just trying to escape. He wasn't just trying to survive. He needed to end this. Without thinking, Marcus pulled a small knife from his belt and, with all his strength, slashed across one of the symbols on the wall. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then a deafening roar erupted from deep within the house. The walls trembled violently, the ground shaking beneath them. The light from the symbols flickered and flared, and then, with a loud crack, the entire room seemed to collapse inward. The creature screamed, its voice warping into something inhuman, something filled with agony. The other shadowy figures disappeared into the darkness, their forms dissolving like smoke. The house groaned as if in pain. The air grew warmer, the oppressive, weightlifting, and the symbols on the walls began to fade. The house, once alive with energy, seemed to be crumbling in on itself. Lila grabbed Marcus's arm, pulling him toward the door. "We have to go. Now." They didn't need to be told twice. Together they ran, pushing through the collapsing structure, their hearts pounding in their chests. The forest outside seemed strangely peaceful in comparison to the chaos within the house. The dog's body lay behind them, but somehow Marcus felt that its death had not been in vain. They didn't speak as they made their way back to the shelter, their steps quick, their minds racing. They had survived. But at what cost? The house, the creatures, the price of curiosity. It was all behind them now. But Marcus knew that they would never be the same again. They had witnessed something that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. And though they had escaped, they both knew one thing for certain. They had only uncovered the tip of the iceberg. The world was full of things that could not be understood, and curiosity, no matter how innocent, came with a price. The darkness may have been left behind, but you never truly escape. If you've felt the chill running down your spine, if you're still haunted by what we've uncovered, hit that like button, because you'll want to know what's next. Subscribe, but don't say I didn't warn you. Share this story, if you dare, with those brave enough to face the things that should remain forgotten. Remember, the curiosity may have taken us here, but will it leave us? Or will it come back for more? Stay with us, if you can handle the truth that's yet to be revealed.